Hello and welcome back. This is a video I've been wanting to make for quite a while. Finally sat down and did it. How I win 80% of my cube matches. So there's two main motivations for why I wanted to make this video. The first is I made a couple changes to how I draft, and I've been winning so much. It feels awesome. So I wanted to share that, just get all the information out there. Partially for me if I want to look back and remember like what I was doing. Also for you guys, so you can just see what I'm doing. The second thing is I just get a lot of comments about how I draft. I know it's different, but a lot of people think I'm doing it just to be wacky or make weird picks. But I'm drafting this way because it works and it wins games. And so I just wanted to put all of the information and logic behind how I play the game, the way I draft, the decks that I make, in one place. So I'm not having these discussions like spread across Discord and stuff because it's so hard to have a conversation with nuance and depth in like a random YouTube comment of people like, "Oh, Caleb took this card. That card's bad." Blah blah blah. Um, and the disclaimer I just want to make: this is what's working for me. I'm not saying this is the only way to draft or play, and I'm not saying it's the best way to draft or play. All I'm claiming is I'm drafting this way, and I'm winning 80% of my cube matches. That's the only claim I'm making. If you're winning more, please tell me. I'd love to see what you're doing, and let's talk about it. So this video is going to be broken into four main sections. First, we'll start with examples, prove that I'm actually winning this much. And then we'll go into some deck examples, and then the three like tenets or things that I figured out, which is be proactive, interact, and don't lose. And don't lose sounds like a joke, but genuinely this is the most important one that took my win rate from 72% to 80%. So yeah, don't lose. I was doing these other two things first. But over the last two cube seasons, I've been really focusing on not losing. It sounds like a joke, but what I mean by that is you shouldn't lose the game. Your opponent should have to win the game. And if you're losing the game before you even like start, or if you lose because of something your deck did or failed to do, that's a big like sink in win rate. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we get there. First example. So the data we're talking about is the last cube season, like the summer one, which started around 820 and went to 9.3. That's like all I could fit in one page, and then up to 9.7. So that was the first cube season, and that actually works out being exactly an 80% win rate, which is awesome. Unfortunately, so Magic Online Vintage Cube came back up like 2 weeks ago. And there was a bug in the system that caused my graphics card to like crash. So I had to do a hard reset of Magic Online. And I lost some of that data, but I've been posting those videos. So the data I do have is an 83% win rate for this season. But with the data that I'm missing, it's around 81% for this current season. And you can see I've been posting videos of this current season. So altogether, it's around 81%. We'll just say 80% win rate. Couple things. The data, that's around 80 matches with you have all the data. Definitely possible. I'm still just running hot. But I will say in all of that data, I haven't had a match less than 2-1. Like I haven't had a losing record in any single league so far. At the time of this recording, I'm sure I will. Like eventually it's going to happen. But you can watch all the videos. Not all of them have been posted, but they will be. So I do a lot of pre-recording, so I think some of these leagues from last season haven't been posted yet, but they will be once this season is over. I'll get the backlog back up there, so you can watch all these videos and see what happened in each one. So now we're getting into the decks, just examples. We're going backwards. So the video title's here if you just want to watch the deck and see how it performed. But this is I first picked this creature over Mox. Really good Jund aggro deck. I'll come back to these and talk about specifics about why they're good, but just I'm going to show you some pictures of deck lists. You can pause and look at these if you want. This video title is Just Busted. This one notably had Mana Crypt, which helps quite a bit. This was Caleb G versus Caleb D, so I did end up queuing against Caleb Durward. We did trophy this one. We Can't Lose. This is one of my very few blue drafts, but this deck was awesome. Steamrolling our opponents. Loved this deck. It's perfect. This was talking about Manatithe Mox Pearl and how it's just so sweet to have both of those in the same deck. Absolutely dominating. This one, I ended up like strip mine locking my opponents a lot, just run and 6 strip mine. did a lot, and then obviously have to kill them, so we killed them with whatever other cards we had. This draft went really poorly, but I think we salvaged it a lot with like Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, Dark Ritual. But in general, you would want more like Mana Elves here instead of having to play Dark Ritual in your Questing Beast deck. My best draft ever. This was fun. I mean, I got Ancestral and Time Walk, so do with that what you will. And then this is the only Storm deck of the recent trophies, but this deck turned out really well. I think I first picked Time Walk, and then I took an early Underworld Breach because I like Underworld Breach Time Walk because you take a bunch of turns. And then I just kept getting more cards that take turns, and then eventually I found Brain Freeze somewhere. No, I didn't find Brain Freeze. It was just Thassa's Oracle. And then it turned into a Storm deck. But I used to draft Storm a lot. Lately, I've stopped drafting Storm, mostly because they got cut High Tide. But yeah, so those are the examples. We'll come back to the decks at the end and just talk about, or I'll reference them throughout the video, just talking about some specific reasons why these decks are good. You can also just watch the videos and see them in action. But this is genuinely, if you take anything away, if you just want to leave the video now, the number one rule of how to win more is just be proactive. And by that I mean maximize the odds that you can do something with your cards at every stage of the game. Because anytime you have a card in your hand that you can't do something with, you're leaving value on the table. Either it's too expensive, your curve is wrong, it doesn't match the situation that you're in right now, and then you're playing too situational of cards, or something else we'll talk about later, like if you're playing combos and you have a combo card that's missing the other piece, you can't play it, so it's not proactive. And you're like, every single time you draw a card that you can't do something with right away, your win rate goes down, basically. So good rule of thumb is just, can I play this if the board is empty? If the more cards you have that work in these situations, especially like turns 1 and 2, the better it is. I want to mention again, this is mostly talking about Vintage Cube or Powered Cubes, where the cards are so strong that almost all of the game is about tempo. I'll talk about that later. So this doesn't necessarily apply to every Magic format. Some Magic formats are more about building card advantage, but the way Vintage Cube is, that's not the case in Vintage Cube. It's almost always just about how efficient can you be with your cards. So, just a couple examples of cards that are proactive versus reactive. Jitte is proactive because you can spend the mana up front. You can play Umezawa's Jitte, you can equip it to a creature, you can attack. It doesn't matter if your opponent has creatures in play yet or not. You can always do this. You can basically, it goldfishes well, and then it just sits in play. And you get 2 Jitte counters, and then you don't have to wait for them to play a creature. You're proactively killing their stuff, essentially, because if you have 2 Jitte counters, and they have a Land of Werewolves in hand, like, you've effectively killed that card before it even came into play because they can't play it because it would die. So that's, I think, why Jitte is so incredibly powerful. It doesn't have to wait around. You can do it at any time, and it's just good removal. Whereas Flame Slash, they have to have a creature in play when you have this card and the mana up. So like turn 1, you can't just run out Flame Slash on the play. It doesn't work like that because you have to wait for them to have a creature. It's still good. I'm not saying it's a bad card. But if you have all Flame Slashes, you're suddenly playing this very reactive deck where you wait for your opponent. If they don't play a creature, you're in trouble. If you have Umezawa's Jitte, you can just play it, attack, get value. Eventually, if they do play a creature, now you've proactively dealt with it in a sense. Another good example is Glorybringer. You can just, if they don't have creatures, you just play him and attack. And then eventually, if they have a creature, he's just around, able to exert and kill something. So you're able to, the moment you hit 5 mana, you just put him in play, kill something. It's great. This one is pretty interesting to me. Strip Mine, Miscalc. They both tax your mana, but Strip Mine taxes your opponent's mana proactively, and then Miscalculation taxes it reactively. So Strip Mine, you just play it, kill their land right away. Suddenly, they don't have access to mana. Miscalc just says, you need more mana than you thought, and I'll counter it. It's not bad. Like, Miscalc, I think, is still a good card, but you can always just Strip Mine your opponent. You can't always just Miscalc. And so having to hold up that mana makes your deck more reactive. And so, if you think about it, having Strip Mine and Glorybringer in your opener, you could just play them at any time. Your hand doesn't care what your opponent's doing, and it's going to disrupt them. If you have Flame Slash and Miscalc, now you suddenly have to wait for your opponent to play a creature, or a spell that you can counter when you have the 2 mana up, your deck's quite reactive. Another example, Thoughtseize versus Flame Slash. This is kind of a specific example for Vintage Cube where the games are typically short. But like turn 1, you can just Thoughtseize. Turn 1, you can't just Flame Slash. So Thoughtseize is proactive in the sense that you can always just do it, disrupt your opponent's hand. Again, not saying it's necessarily better than Flame Slash, but you could have a hand with like 3 Thoughtseizes and it's going to be good or playable in almost every matchup. 3 Flame Slashes isn't necessarily going to be able to let you progress the game towards your game plan in the same way. It might, if they're playing a lot of creatures and you're on the draw, like it could be good, but this is always going to be a proactive card. So hopefully that makes sense. You just want to play stuff that, I think the rule of thumb was, can you do this on an empty board? Specifically turns 1 and 2. The more cards you have that do that, the better your deck is because you're not waiting around for specific situations. You're creating the situations of the game instead of reacting to what your opponent's doing, right? Turn 1 Thoughtseize them. You've set up a game. You're making plays and crafting a game. If you strip mine them, again, you're crafting a game where they don't have access to mana. You just don't have to hold out waiting to disrupt them. You've done it, and then you keep playing. Similar to that, tempo is king. Impacting the game is all that matters. Very similar to the first one. Like, you just want to be doing stuff. And this sounds obvious, but in a lot of cases, it's not. Even myself, I kind of fall into this trap. So let's just go through a simple example. Let's say your opponent has 4 Centaur Coursers, and you have an Ancestral Recall. Best card in Magic, right? Greatest forever. You play it. After you've played Ancestral Recall, the opponent still has 4 Coursers. You have nothing in play. So in this situation, Ancestral Recall did nothing because the board state is exactly the same. It gave you cards in hand, but those cards in hand don't matter until you play them. So for example, if you Ancestral into 3 Lightning Bolts, then you Lightning Bolt the Coursers. Indirectly Ancestral impacted them, but really what you draw and play off Ancestral is the only thing that matters to the game. And most importantly, it only matters if you play them. For example, if you have only 1 mana and you play Ancestral, you're tapped out, they kill you with the Coursers, all these Lightning Bolts in your hand don't do anything because you didn't play them. They didn't impact the board. Just as a similar example, if you just played Anger of the Gods, it would kill all of the Coursers for cheaper than Ancestral into Lightning Bolts into the Coursers. So what I'm trying to get across with this is like, Ancestral's a good card. It draws you in a bunch. And it's a good enabler, but it's how you impact the board that actually defines your deck, right? If you're Ancestraling into all basic lands, it doesn't do anything. But if you're Ancestraling into good cards that impact the board proactively, it's great, right? Ancestral into Anger of Gods in this situation, way better than Ancestral into triple Lightning Bolt. It's cheaper, keeps the card around, things like that. So Ancestral is not like a main game plan. It's something that improves the rest of your game plan. But if the rest of your game plan is bad, then Ancestral doesn't help you that much because then you're drawing into cards that don't impact the board at an effective rate. So I think typically you take this early because you can assume that your deck will get these high impact cards that can actually win the game or end the game. And I think that's fine, but you just got to keep in mind, like, Ancestral isn't going to win you the game. I know I have won games by making my opponent draw out and deck out, but like 90% of the time, I'm just saying card advantage doesn't win games. Playing to the board and killing your opponent is what wins games. Pretty good example of this, like Rampaging Baloth versus Horn of Greed. Baloth's impacts the board immediately. Horn of Greed just gives you cards. And you can translate those cards into something that impacts the board. But almost all the time, just impacting the board, like, there's no point in having cards if you're not using them to impact the board. Like, you could have 50 million cards in hand. If you can't play them, or they're all just cards that draw cards, they don't do anything. Whereas Rampaging Baloth, it gives you a 4/4. It's a 6/6. You kill your opponent in like 2 turns. Similar effect, Broadside Bombardiers versus Audacious Thief. You know, when it attacks, you get to draw a card. That's great, but then you have to use that card to translate into something that impacts the board. Whereas Broadside Bombardiers, when it attacks, you just kill something. You don't have to wait around to draw a card. it just hits the board right away. And so, just an example, like when you attack with Audacious Thief, you're getting a card, but we don't know what that card could be. It could be a Lightning Bolt, it could be a Swamp, it could be a Slay the Spire card. And so, with something like this, you're introducing variants of, like, this card can be helpful in some situations, sometimes it's not. It's also often more expensive if you're drawing cards and then having to play them compared to just, like, Broadside Bombardiers just does it all on its own. It just kills things right away. Over the long run, this is how you accumulate advantages. And then the most important thing, again, like something like Audacious Thief, it requires other cards to actually even be able to do something. Because if your deck is just all of these type of enablers, you're just not doing something. Like you play Audacious Thief, draw Ancestral, you play Horn of Greed, you play land, you play Ancestral, you draw. None of this is like doing anything to the board. You could have 5,000 cards in hand, draw your whole deck. Your opponent could kill you with like a 3/3 in this situation. Whereas with something like Rampaging Baloths, you just make creatures. There's no variance in like, I don't know what this is going to do. It's like, this is going to make creatures, push me towards closing out the game very effectively and deterministically. Same with Broadside Bombardiers. These type of cards can just generate so many cards worth of value, but the cards worth of value is so important because, like, drawing a Lightning Bolt and then playing the Lightning Bolt is like a two-step process that requires a lot of things to go right. You have to have mana and things like that. Whereas just making a 4/4 or killing a creature right away is cards and mana worth of value. As an example of this, right, Rampaging Baloth, it just makes a 4/4 beast. You could equivalently play Ancestral Recall, draw Lotus Petal, Black Lotus in a 4/4, play Lotus Petal, play Black Lotus, play the 4/4. This is an equivalent amount of value, and it's measured by basically, right, these are all great enablers. It's measured by what your payoff is. So in this case, if your payoff is bad, then you need all these enablers to just have a mediocre payoff. If your payoff is good, like Rampaging Baloths, just as an example, it's too expensive for Vintage Cube, but you just get a 4/4 every turn, right? Instead of playing Ferocious Zeng in this example, if you're playing Rampaging Baloths as your payoff, then you get more value out of it. I hope I'm being clear. Basically, it's the payoffs that measure what your deck does, not the enablers. The enablers accelerate it. If you have a better payoff than Ferocious Zeng, suddenly Ancestral, Black Lotus, Lotus Petal get more interesting because you're doing better stuff with them. But it only matters if you're doing better stuff with them. Rule number 3 is talking about interaction. And this is probably the most important and underrated thing of Vintage Cube, is like the easiest way to get value in a game is just through interacting with your opponents. So the first claim I'll make is that interaction is like a Black Lotus. And I'm using Black Lotus and Ancestral for all my examples because it's Vintage Cube, so why not? But let's just talk about it. So if you Mana Tithe a Jace the Mind Sculptor, it's like you got a free Black Lotus worth of value. And I'm not being facetious. This isn't this is like this. It is directly exactly the same as if you just had a free Black Lotus in play. Because you get +3 mana and you're even on cards. So let's just look at it. You have 4 mana, your opponent has 4 mana. They spent all of their mana on Jace the Mind Sculptor. You spent 1 mana on Mana Tithe. And then let's say you spent your remaining 3 mana on Broadside Bombardiers. You're 3 mana ahead relative to them because they got nothing. And you got 3 mana worth of stuff in play. So you have a +3 mana advantage. And this is, you could imagine this, right? If they didn't Mana Tithe, or if they didn't Jace and you didn't Mana Tithe, if you just had a free Black Lotus and you just got to put Bombardiers in play, that's the exact same amount of value as you get from Mana Tithing a Jace. So it's not hyperbole, it's not being facetious. Genuinely Mana Tithing a Jace is as much value as having a Black Lotus in play and casting something for free. But the criteria is it's only advantage if you actually do something with the extra mana. So like if you just held up all 4 mana, Mana Tithe their Jace, but you didn't also play Broadside Bombardiers in the same turn, you don't get that mana advantage anymore. So this is why proactive plays are so important, because if your interaction and your removal is proactive, you can capitalize on this mana advantage much more effectively than your opponents can, and then you get quote-unquote free Black Lotuses from your Mana Tithes. So this is my claim. This is why I think Mana Tithe is so good. If you think about it like this way, Mana Tithe is a free Black Lotus some amount of the time. I picked 70, but we could do the stats. When you're Mana Tithing a Jace, when you're Mana Tithing a Glorybringer, when you're Mana Tithing a Coalition Relic, this is giving you a Black Lotus worth of value with some frequency. And if you're able to capitalize on that by having a proactive deck, this is how you win games. And removal is essentially the same. If you Swords to Plowshares a Rankle, you're up 3 mana worth of value. Lightning Bolt, similar thing. So removal and interaction is such an easy way to get advantage and pull ahead. Because I know everyone loves getting Black Lotus and cheating something out, but you can undo that. Like, actually, this is a very good example, right? If your opponent goes turn 1, Black Lotus, cast Rankle, and you Swords to Plowshares the Rankle, you've just completely undone the mana advantage that they had from a Black Lotus. Now you're both at parity again, except they're down a card from playing the Black Lotus and the Rankle. So it's actually even better. But maybe that gives you a good example. We can go to Jace as well, right? Like, if your opponent goes turn 1, Black Lotus Jace, and you Mana Tithe that Jace, you've just reversed the mana advantage that they got from the Black Lotus. So on the flip side, if they didn't Black Lotus, you're gaining that mana advantage relative to them. But again, this only does anything if you do something with your mana. Playing to the board is all that matters. So yeah, Swords to Plowshares, this is a free Black Lotus 70% of the time, sometimes even better. Again, this is somewhat joking, but if you think about it, it's really not, because the main value of this card is it's cheaper than what it's killing. That mana advantage is how you pull ahead in games and how you win games. And then the next claim, interaction can also be like Ancestral, where disrupting combos provides more value than it costs you to do. So let's just say you have like a Thoughtseize. Great proactive card. Your opponent has Sneak Attack, Gristlebrand Atraxa, and Emrakul. If you Thoughtseize the Sneak Attack, you're effectively invalidating these other 3 cards. So disrupting part of a combo can make other cards worthless, and now suddenly you've gained like an Ancestral Recall's worth of value out of this. And it doesn't have to be complex combos. Like, there's just some cards that go with other cards. Say the opponent has pump spells and you just kill their creature, or take their creature. Now these pump spells don't do anything. You're getting value. So because you get to choose how you interact and what you interact with, you can set it up so that you invalidate some of their cards and leave others okay. Like, if they have a ton of mana and you take their 1 payoff, you've effectively removed all of their mana and acceleration, that type of thing. And then you can also, depending on the removal spell, you can kill more than one thing with 1 spell. So then you're getting cards and mana advantage. Like this Anger the Gods Center Courser thing. It's like you get 2 Black Lotuses and an Ancestral Recall worth of value. And that's, like, again, you're never going to get 2 Black Lotuses and an Ancestral in your deck. But how you impact the board matters so much more. Because if you're killing 3, 9 mana worth of things for 3 mana, you're getting plus 6 mana, and you're getting plus 3 cards, or plus 2 cards because you spent 1 from the exchange. So these cards are great, but interaction does so much more than these cards will ever do for you, that playing to interact with your opponents is the most important thing you can possibly be doing towards winning a game. There are a lot of criteria, like not all interaction will do this. The most important one, again, is proactive interaction, because if you're spending 5 turns not playing cards, waiting to Anger of the Gods, you're not getting this mana advantage because you didn't spend your mana previously. So you're, like, it's cumulative. If you're spending 3 turns not playing stuff and then play this, you've kind of traded even on mana, and you're just a little bit up on cards. Whereas if you have proactive plays the whole time, and then you get to do this, get the value, now you're capitalizing on all that mana advantage. So interaction needs to be cheap, reliable, and proactive. So the most important rule, I think, for Vintage Cube in particular is, like, never sacrifice being proactive for interaction. Just doing stuff is almost always better than not doing stuff. And this doesn't mean just play cards just to play cards. This means you want to take cards that you can play without as much risk over cards that you can't play all the time. Like, this is an example of a hand. It's interactive, but it's not proactive. And a hand like this is such an easy way to lose a game of Vintage Cube, because let's just say your opponent doesn't play anything for 4 turns, and then you've wasted all of your mana waiting and waiting and waiting to play these cards, and now you don't get that mana tempo advantage that you would get if you're lightning bolting a 3/3 and using your mana to do stuff. If you're just sitting around with a hand waiting for your opponent to do stuff, you're not getting that advantage, and it's not that good. Not that any of these cards are bad. I think these cards are all fantastic. But if you have too many cards like this, your deck just doesn't do anything a lot of the time. Like, let's say you have this hand and your opponent's playing Storm or Reanimator. Great. The only functional card in your hand is now Mana Tithe, right? And you're not proactive, you can't race them, you can't do anything, and you just lose. This is such an easy way to just lose games. Whereas if you compare to this hand, every single card in here is proactive. You can play Thoughtseize anytime. Deep Cavern Bat you can put down anytime. Jitte, play, start accruing like counters. Broadside Bombardiers, it's attacking for damage. The moment you need to kill something, you can. Same with Glorybringer. So this hand, it's great, but it's also really disruptive, right? You're still Thoughtseizing them, disrupting their hand. You have removal, you can kill stuff. But if your opponent's playing Reanimator, you can race them. If they're playing Storm, you can race them. If they're playing a creature deck, you can still kill all their creatures. So this hand is more flexible, and it's going to win more games because it's proactive. That doesn't mean you can't play reactive cards. I love Mana Tithe, I love Lightning Bolt. And a mix of both is okay, as long as you have proactive plays. Like, we have things we can do with our hand. It's okay to have a Lightning Bolt sometimes, because it's likely to be good in most situations. But you need to have things you can play on an empty board for your deck to function and to win. And this goes into, like, if you looked at my trophy decks, I largely avoid blue. And it's because blue tends to fall into this reactive trap of things you have to have, like, waiting around for your opponent to do something. And so I'd say doing stuff is better than not doing stuff, and often blue doesn't do stuff. And I know this is controversial. I've said this a lot, like Ancestral is... I say it a lot, Ancestral doesn't win games. It's what you do with the Ancestral cards that wins games, right? If you Ancestral into Miscalc Mana Drain, that's great. Great hand. But if that's all your hand does, you're not going to win the game. You have to play something that kills your opponent to win the game. And so a lot of blue is reactive, situational, and not directly impacting the board. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's hard to make a deck that is proactive using just blue cards. We'll just give a couple examples. Like, you don't find these type of cards in blue. Gut is insane. Skyclave Apparition is insane. I'll talk about most of these, like, on their own. But blue tends to have cards more like this, where Tidebinder, it's reactive. You have to have the mana available and play it at the moment when your opponent triggers an ability to get the effect. Quantum Riddler gives you cards in hand, but doesn't put something into play. Like, if we compare Quantum Riddler to Titania, 5 mana 4/6, when it enters you draw a card. Great. Titania, 5 mana 5/3, when it enters you get a land back from your graveyard, and then you can get a 5/3 like if you sacrifice the land. So getting a land back is like drawing a card, but then you translate that card into mana advantage, something in play, and then card advantage is like a creature, and then more mana advantage because you're getting a 5/3 worth of stats in play without having to spend any mana to do so. So it's just, Quantum Riddler's great, but you'd have to draw a card that then does all of that stuff to get the value, whereas Titania, you just play it and you just get the value. You don't have to draw a card. This is the Rampaging Baloths of this example, and this is the Horn of Greed. Not bad, but there's like that extra step you have to do of, great, now I have a card, what do I do with that card? So just some comparisons. I think Skyclave destroys Tidebinder. Like, Tidebinder, the dream case is like you counter maybe a fetch land or a planeswalker, something like that. But it's really reactive. Like, you have to have the 3 mana up and then hold it up and hit when they happen. So you're either wasting mana holding this up, or you just have to get lucky this hits. Skyclave, just kill something right away. It doesn't matter really when you play it. If they have a Signet in play, you eat the Signet. If you have a Llanowar Elves in play, you eat the Llanowar Elves. Like, this just is very proactive because 90% of the time, if there's anything in play, you just play it and eat it. It's great. It's in play. No problem. So the hyper proactivity of the non-blue cards makes them able to be played more often, which means you're able to capitalize on your mana more often, which means you get tempo more often, which means you're pulling ahead in games. Yeah, kind of talked about Quantum Riddler versus Glorybringer or Titania, but this gives you value of cards in hand, whereas this kills the board. And again, I'm not saying Quantum Riddler is bad. It has flexibility, it's got warp, it draws you cards. All I'm saying is, if you have a bunch of cards that just give you more cards, that leads to like a slower, sluggish pace of play, where you're like, if you Quantum Riddler into a Flame Slash, that's 6 mana. Glorybringer Attack Exert is 5 mana. And this type of stuff adds up so quickly over the course of a game. That's all I'm saying. Play both. They're both good. And then this is a great example, like Gut versus Spellseeker. Gut just immediately fills the board, makes 4/1 skeletons, kills your opponent so quickly. It's card advantage, it's awesome. Spellseeker just puts a card into your hand. And then depending on what that card in hand is, you can get value out of it. But again, you have to get something to card, you have to play the card, stuff like that. Hopefully I'm clear on this. I'm sure I'll get comments on it, but I just want to again reiterate, I'm not saying Spellseeker's bad. I'm not saying Riddler's bad. I'm not necessarily saying Tidebinder's bad. I'm just saying they're more situational and they're just more reactive. Whereas you can always just play a Skyclave, you can always just play a Glorybringer, you can always just play a Gut, and they're going to do the thing and they're going to start progressing the game towards the end. Whereas cards like Spellseeker, they don't do the thing on their own. They can help you do other things, but that other thing that you're doing has to be strong enough to make it worth playing a 3-mana 1/1, right? If it's getting Time Walk, if it's getting Reanimate, that kind of thing, then it starts becoming worth playing this card. Most important rule, number 4, don't lose. And by this, I just mean minimize the chances of having a non-functional deck, non-functional hands, or non-functional draws. And mostly this comes back to being proactive, because if your deck doesn't function, you can't be proactive. So you want a functional deck so that you can be proactive, so that you can kill your opponents. But there's really like 3 major main ways to lose. Number 1 is bad mana, 2 is no plan, and 3 is sketchy combos. We'll talk through all of them. Bad mana is probably the most straightforward. Like, you can't win the game if you can't cast your spells. So take your fetch lands, take your duels, pick them up. Like, you want ideally like 8+ non-basics. If you're in a situation where you want to play a card and you don't have the mana to play that card, that's a failing of your deck, and like, you want better mana. Either better mana or take less ambitious cards. But your goal is to never have that friction between mana and spells, because if you do, then you're not able to be proactive. You're not killing your opponent. And an important lesson for this is any fixing of any kind is always going to be better than your 24th playable that sits in your sideboard. Not saying Chandra's bad, but just like, you have a fully functional deck, or you're really ahead on how many playables you have relative to the draft. Just start taking fixing, because you're almost always going to be able to play that fixing in your deck. It'll have an impact in the game. It'll help you cast your spells. You're not always going to be able to play, your 24th, 25th, 26th playables. So, it might be a good card, might be in your colors, it might be your 7th lightning bolt in your deck. Maybe take the fixing instead, and that can help you start winning. Because ideally, you get 45 drafts, your deck is 40 cards. Ideally, you only have like 7 cards in your sideboard, because the rest is just playables in your deck. And fixing is the easiest way to get more playables in your deck. And then next we have a plan. So just asking yourself, how will I win the game? Because again, support like this, Swords Abolisher, Talisman, Time Twister, this isn't a way to win the game. These are all great support cards. Talisman can ramp you, Swords can kill stuff, give you tempo, card advantage, or like tempo advantage, that kind of thing. Time Twister can like refill your hand. These aren't winning the game though, so you have to look at your deck and say, how am I going to kill my opponent? Am I going to play a Titania with a fetch land? Am I going to accelerate to an Othari with some protection? That kind of thing is how you end the game. And if you don't have, it doesn't have to be a single card. It could be Reanimate, it could be like Brain Freeze, it could be a bunch of cheap creatures. It just needs to be some kind of coherent plan of, in an ideal world, this is what my deck does, and here's how it kills the opponent. So for example, like, if you're playing Acceleration, you don't just take Acceleration for the sake of Acceleration, right? Like, Land of Worlds is good because it ramps you. Great. What does it ramp you into? That's what you need to be asking yourself. So Llanowar Elves ramps into 3 drops really well because you go turn 1, 1 drop, and then you have +1 mana on turn 2 for 3. So if you're taking Llanowar Elves, you want to have good proactive 3 drops you can play on turn 2. Versus like Signets enable 4 drops. So if you're taking a Signet, you play Signet on turn 2, you play a 4 drop on turn 3. So these are like 2 different types of builds that you need to like plan out. If you're taking Talismans to go with Bombardiers, it's not as good because you're going to play turn 3 Bombardiers either way from this acceleration. So just as an example, this is one of my trophy decks. This is a great 1-3 deck because we have, you know, a bunch of 1s, not that many 2s or 4s, but a lot of 3s. And so this deck, the main game plan is you just turn 1, play an elf, and then play a 3 drop on turn 2. You're suddenly very far ahead. You kill your opponent. If we had a lot of like 4s, suddenly these accelerants aren't as good because now you're missing that whole turn 2 worth of mana tempo advantage, and then you can fall behind. And then another thing that I was talking about, like the signets, like planning out, don't just take cards just to take cards. You need to take cards to do something for your deck. Sol Ring, probably the best card in all of Vintage Cube, maybe Mana Crypt, either way. But it's not just generically good. It's only good if you're doing stuff with it. So here's a deck that I drafted from my cube, the Powered Synergy Cube. There's a video of this deck, by the way, if you want to see it. Search like my favorite deck ever, Caleb Gannon Powered Synergy Cube. But Sol Ring is not even good in this deck because there's like 5 cards that it could even possibly cast, right? Most of our stuff is 1 mana. So the game plan of this deck doesn't match with Sol Ring, so you wouldn't put it in the deck. And it's when you have mismatch of like support versus game plan, that causes a lot of friction on your deck, and you can run into issues. Like if you have all removal, you're more of like a late game oriented deck. But then if you don't have late game cards, suddenly you have all this support for a deck that doesn't win the game the way that your deck wants it to. So for example, like if you have Ragavan, Ragavan likes to hit your opponent. So this is a good example of a card that you want to play cards that enable it to hit. Like cheap removal becomes quite good with Ragavan because your ideal scenario goes turn 1 Ragavan, turn 2 kill your thing, hit ya. So you want to have a couple lightning bolts. Maybe you have Deathgreater's Champion to give it double strike. Hitting your opponent twice with Ragavan in 1 turn, kind of awesome. So that's how you build out a game plan. Think about how your cards work together. This is probably the hardest lesson to learn, and you just have to like play a lot to get this experience. But at least if you start thinking about it, you're not just taking, oh, I'm in red, I take red cards, right? You got to think, what are these red cards doing? How are they progressing my game plan? And what are they bringing me closer towards winning? So that one's going to take a while to learn, but it's important just to think about it and you'll get there eventually. And the last one, this is the most important one for me. This took me from 72% win rate to 80%, was just avoiding sketchy combos. Because largely they reduce your ability to be proactive. I made a whole video about this. So if you want to see a long in-depth with all the math behind why these cards don't typically work out, you can watch it there. But I'll do kind of a bit of a summary of just what I've taken away from that, where I just don't touch these cards ever in draft anymore. It's Channel, Flash, Sneak Attack, Dark Depths. I don't play Reanimator. I don't touch Storm. I just don't do it because these cards can lose you the game in 2 ways. They can hit you with variance during a game. In that video, I talk about like how likely it is to assemble 2-card combos like this. It's like 5% chance. If you have a Demonic Tutor, it goes up to 15% chance, which sounds high, but it's still like 85% of the time you're not hitting your combo. That's pretty rough. As the game goes on, obviously it's more likely. This is more in the first 5 turns. How likely is it to assemble a combo? But it's not super likely. And then the most important one I think is wasted picks during a draft. Like if you first pick Flash, then you're like, great, I'm going to take Sneak Attack. And then you don't see a single like Eldrazi or Fatty. These 2 picks just don't help you in any way. Whereas if you took something that's more generically helpful, like a fetch land, an enabler, support, like any good card, you could put them in your deck and you're not missing wasted picks. So this is an easy way to lose. Trainwreck a draft. If you try and draft like Flash and it doesn't work out, that can be a problem. Or you draft Channel Emrakul and either during the game, you never see Channel and Emrakul at the same time, or you draft all the Eldrazi, never see Channel, or you draft Channel, never see the Eldrazi, you're wasting picks. So what I've been doing instead, Dark Depths, it just on its own does literally nothing. So it's a dead draw unless you have the combo. Whereas Field of the Dead and Strip Mine, both great lands enablers, but they do stuff on their own. Field of the Dead taps for mana, Strip Mine taps for mana, and disrupts your opponent. Both great ways for a lands deck to get value out of their lands without requiring them to play a sketchy combo in their deck. Sneak Attack, cards are so strong now. Like, you can Sneak Attack in like Grave Titan or Vitali, things like that. And that's great, but you have to assemble the combo, play it, and do the thing. There's so many cards now that just give you value when you play them in attack, like Glorybringer. It's not as good as sneaking in Atraxa, but you don't need Sneak plus Atraxa. You just need Glorybringer. You can always play it. You just play it in attack, and it gives you a ton of value always rather than sometimes. And for me, this change has made all the difference. Same with Channel Emrakul, right? You can hope to channel into an Emrakul, but if you draw Channel without Emrakul, it does nothing. If you draw Emrakul without Channel, it does nothing. If instead your deck is just Birds of Paradise Gut, if you draw Gut without Birds of Paradise, oh no, I have to wait one extra turn to play it. Or if you draw Birds of Paradise without Gut, you're going to ramp into something else. So these cards are just generically good, and they don't create these situations where your deck can just lose to itself, where, let's say you just have Channel, Sneak Attack, Dark Depths in your hand, and no other playables. Like, you have lost the game your opponent didn't win, right? If you're not doing anything, you've lost the game. And so the part about this section is just make your opponent win the game by minimizing the chances of your deck losing to itself. And this I see a lot online or people's decks, is like, if your deck, even like just playing, I just see people lose to their own decks rather than their opponents killing them. And like, if you don't do that, your win rate goes up tremendously. So this all comes back to just the number one rule is be proactive. Specifically, if you maximize the odds you can do something with your cards, that's how you win games, because Magic is all about doing stuff with your cards. And with that, let's just go back and look through some of the trophy decks. Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense now of like why they did well. This deck that I just posted recently has a great 1-3 curve. We have 5 turn 1 accelerants that can let us play our good 3-drops. And we have 4 really good proactive 3-drops that we can play that will all like immediately win the game. We have some removal, but it's mostly proactive removal, right? We have Inquisition, we have Renin 6, Broadside Bombardiers, Grist. Those type of things are things you can just play always and get value out of them. We have a Mox, which is helpful. Our fixing is fairly decent. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sources of fixing, with Deathrite Shaman and Ignoble Hierarch counting as like 11, 12. So our mana is good. We've got a good game plan of 1-3. All these are proactive. Our top end, we have a decent amount of removal and interaction with like Chain Lightning, Bitter Triumph, you know, Bone Crusher Giant, Renin 6, that type of thing. And our top end reflects that, where Titania is just a game ender. You play it, you get a land back, you get a bunch of value. Fury is great top end because you play it, kill their board, it attacks 3/3 double strike. Headliner Scarlet, again, it's just a card you can always play. If they have creatures, you stop them from blocking. If you don't, you get value. So this deck is just incredibly proactive. It has a bunch of disruption and a variety of different avenues. We got hand disruption, creature disruption, you know, damage. So this deck was great. Next one, Just Busted. Similar kind of vein. This one had more artifact-based acceleration. So you'll see if you have like Mox Mana Crypt, particular Moxen, they make 2 drops better, whereas 1 mana elves make 3 drops better. So this deck is very 2 heavy because you're more likely to be able to go like Mox Deep Cavern Bat than you were in this deck to be able to go like Llanowar Elves into 3 drop, if that makes sense. So we have more 2s than we do 1s, although this deck probably would have liked a couple more 1s. But again, like, let's just look at which cards are proactive. We have all the Chalices, Retrofitters, great. Jite's proactive, Bowmasters, Freebooter, Bat, Stoneforge Mystic, Lion Sash, Containment Priest, Spellbinder, Flicker Wisp, Parallax Wave, Elspeth, like almost all of these cards are proactive, and then we just have a little splash of reactive, like Reprieve, Path to Exile, Static Prison, Prismatic Ending. It's great to have some reactive cards, but it's almost impossible for our opening hand to be non-functional because we have a ton of interaction, but it's interaction we can play at any time and have a just have a great time with it. This one, Caleb G versus Caleb D. This one is just a great curve. This is really capitalizing on mana advantage just through having all busted cards. We have 2 accelerants as like our only green cards. And these I think are so important for the deck because this deck is actually not that fast. We only have 2 accelerants. Without these, it's quite slow. But these let us play Lelia, Goblin Rabblemaster, Skyclave, Adeline, all on curve. And let's just again look at how proactive the deck is. 3 reactive cards, actually quite a few reactive 1-drops, but they're 1 mana reactive plays, so you're not like wasting time holding them up, waiting for something to happen. Like you can just, most of the time, Prismatic Ending, Portable Hole, and Swords will have something to hit. Swords in particular usually are hitting something that costs 2 or 3 mana, and you're pulling ahead. But we have Elves, Halfling, Bonecrusher, Jackrabbit, Jite, Thalia, Adeline, Skyclave, Realmmaster, Lelia. All of these are proactive. All of these are proactive. So we have a lot of reactive cards, but they're all the cheap reactive cards. So you were getting mana advantage out of these. And this is kind of interesting if you think about it. Getting mana advantage off of a Swords to Plowshares can be kind of similar as playing a ramp card. Like I said, if you Swords a 4-drop, it's like you got Black Lotus worth of mana value. So that's an alternate way that decks like this, which are a little bit clunky, can pull the tempo back in their favor, where if you're using Swords to stop your opponent's 3 in the same turn you're playing a 3, you can kind of get ahead on mana that way. And I think that's why this deck was so successful, is really proactive. And then we didn't have as much acceleration as we'd like, but we make up for that by having cheap interaction that is almost always going to pull ahead on mana. Like if you Static Prison a 3-drop, you're up on mana. If you Portable Hole a 2-drop, they go turn 2 Jite, you Portable Hole their Jite, and then you play Delighted Halfling, you're up 1 mana. And then that translates over the course of the game. This deck did have blue, but it had like just a very few blue cards with Tamiyo, which is just busted. Daze is awesome because the opportunity cost of holding it up is essentially 0. And you can Daze, similar to Mana Tithe, like 3-4 mana worth of card for 0 mana. So there's no cost at all of holding it up. Yeah, Daze is awesome. But this deck, cheap, really cheap interaction. We have quite a bit of mana, so like Leyline Binding is usually going to be 1 or 2 mana. And then we just have proactive cards. Psychic Frog, great, ends the game. Baleful Strix, you can play it. Tidehollow Scholar, Delphi Voidwalker, Bowmasters, Caustic Bronco. All cards you can just put into play and be happy about it. Barrogoyf, Carnage Interpreter, Mind Twist, Grief, all that kind of stuff. You just play it, you kill your opponent, and then just a little bit of cheap disruption. Daze, Path, Bloodchief's Thirst to stop them from doing stuff. The one thing about this deck is it does play a little bit more on the card advantage axis than I typically do, where something like Mind Twist can just destroy their hand, stock up, refills your hand, Carnage Interpreter refills your hand. So there's a little bit more that I didn't quite talk about where like you can win by pulling ahead on cards, but this deck does it really by like denying your opponent cards more than necessarily giving us cards. And so that's a type of disruption that if your opponent doesn't have cards, they can't play stuff, and then you're winning that way. As opposed to like if you just drew 8 cards, you only get advantage from those 8 cards if you've put them into play. So oftentimes making your opponent discard their hand is better than making you, draw even more of your hand. This one I already talked about being a really good 1-3 deck, but we have, 3 accelerants, a bunch of 3s, all proactive cards. Our interaction is cheap. We have Mana Tithe, Swords, Dismember, all at 1, and then Chainsaw at 2. And then the rest of it is just proactive cards, right? You can play Fourth Lingus anytime, Nissa or Bored Pyroglyph, Elite Spellbinder, Oko. I think the only reactive card in like the whole top end of the deck is really Flage, But even then, you could just play Flades, do 3 to your opponent. It's not that bad. I will say Traveling Chocobo, not an ideal card. I think it's pretty bad, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. This deck, let's go through it. A lot of ones. Really good curve here. Yeah, wow, this deck was awesome. Holy cow. We really wanted more turn 1 accelerants. We just had the Delighted Halfling. Like, look at this 3-drop section. Although 2 of them, Sink into Stupor, Bone Crusher, and Phoenix, aren't really 3-drops. So we only had like 3 top-end cards. And then if you look at this, Fury is a 0, Lurian Revealed is like a 1 mana, Gush is a 0, 0 and a 1. So our curve is super low, where if you like put these all in the 1 slot, we're interacting for really cheap. And a lot of cards are proactive. So we're getting mana advantage through Chain Lightning their 2-drops, through having creatures that are just more efficient, through mana tithing their 4-drops, and then playing our late game proactive cards. This deck, yeah, this one was sketchy because we wanted more mana elves. I feel like that's true of almost any time. I value the mana elves extremely highly, so when you don't get them, it's kind of sad. But we made do by playing Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, Dark Ritual, Grim Monolith, Mind Stone. So it's not ideal, but we still had enough acceleration to make do with what we had. And then this deck, just a lot of times we had Wrenn and 6 plus Strip Mine. This is like a lands synergy, but both of these cards hold their own completely. Like you could just play Wrenn and 6 and get value from getting your fetches back, kill their 1-drops. It's great. Strip Mine is like, you know, you're denying your opponent mana, so you can play it at any time. Combine them together, and suddenly you just have this sweet combo. And this is what combo should be, is 2 cards that on their own are great. When you play them together, they're great. That's the best case scenario. But just, like, all of this stuff is so good. Voidwalker, Bowmasters, Overlord is like card advantage that becomes a 5/5 later. So normally I don't like cards that are just you play it and draw a card, but this puts inevitability on the table of you play it turn 2, on turn 6 you're gonna have a 5/5 for free. It's kind of like a suspend card in a way. And then Minsc and Boo, Fury, like all these cards are just absolutely disgusting. This video titled my best draft ever. Notably not my best deck ever, but the games in this video were so good. Not a lot to say about this deck. We had Ancestral, Time Walk, Snapcaster, so we just did the thing. But again, all cheap interaction. Our game plan is really tempoing them out and capitalizing that tempo with like Psychic Frog, Dark Confidant, Caustic Bronco, where we're killing all their stuff, they don't have things in play, and our creatures are giving us value every single turn. Tamiyo as well, Fallen Shinobi, Shieldred. So this deck was really sick. And then this deck was unique. It's the only Storm trophy I've had in a while. I had a ton of them before, but I've just stopped drafting it. But this one, the way the draft worked, you can watch the video. I opened Time Walk, and then I started, like, you're going to play Time Walk. I think Time Walk is the best blue card by a mile. It's like 10 times better than Ancestral. Like, I open this, and then I start taking things that are good with Time Walk. So you're like, okay, I'll take, like, a Tamiyo, and then I'll take a Narset to help me find the Time Walk. And suddenly I had this whole, or like Storm Chaser's talent, so I could Time Walk more and more. Suddenly I had this whole blue deck that's based around Time Walk and Breach, sort of a Storm-ish deck, but it doesn't, like, just, like, all of these cards kind of function on their own, and then you just have this combo kill of Underworld Breach, Frantic Search, draw your deck, cast Thassa's Oracle. Or the main combo for me was Underworld Breach, cast Time Walk like 6 times, and then just kill them with an Urza or something. So this deck was cool too, but this doesn't happen very often. We'll put it that way. And I think my closing statement is that focusing on decreasing the amount of times you lose the game is more productive than focusing on increasing the amount of times you win the game, because there's only so much room to improve win rate, right? If your best decks are winning 95% of the time, maybe you'll go up to like 98%. And that's not a huge impact because it takes so much effort to get there. Whereas if your worst decks are losing like almost every game, just making it so your worst decks are a little bit better is such an effective way to improve your win rate. That like this is way more important to focus on than improving your best decks. And that's why all my stuff is on removing variance, not losing, making sure your decks are functional, competent, and capable every single time. And that's why drafting sketchy combos can cause issues because yes, they can work. You can draft a good Reanimator deck, but you're not going to draft a good Reanimator deck every time. And the question is, do your bad Reanimator decks still win? And if not, what can you do instead to make sure your bad decks are winning, you know, with a comparable rate as your good decks? Because not every draft is going to go well. But if you look at my cube data, I don't have a single 1-2 result anywhere, like match result or league result. So every single league, I was 2-1 or better in all of this data. And that's really important. Like we basically just don't have bad decks. And then sometimes we have really good decks that trophy. So overall, my trophy rate might be lower than some other people who draft like super high variance. But if you go 0-3 and then 3-0, that's so much worse than going like 2-1, 2-1, 3-0, 2-1, 3-0 in terms of overall win rate. So if you care about that, worth focusing on just making sure you lose less so that your win rate goes up. And if you like the way that I talk about games, play games, or just discuss the theory, I'm actually working on 2 games that you can check out right now. The first is Azoth. It's a roguelike deck building card game that's really engaging. I'm having a ton of fun making it and playing it. That's going to be coming digitally soon, so you can go wishlist it, and we're opening it to playtesting soon. And the second game that I have developed, you can actually go get right now, is Alchemancy. It's like a cube-style card game, but it all comes in one box. So there's no like expensive singles or anything. It's a board game, but it is a cube. And it does some really awesome things that I'm excited about. I take all this strategy that I talked about here and put it into the card design so they're all balanced. There's a global turn structure, so there's no first player card advantage. And the gameplay is simultaneous. So because it's a global turn structure, nobody goes first or second. And that also means we take all of the time when you spend doing decisions, and both players do that at the same time. So games run much quicker. And my favorite part is you can do a 1v1 draft, live draft. So like you see this graphic here where you're drafting your hand in the game. You can get that cube draft style experience with just 2 players. You don't need to go up to 8. So if you're interested at all, go check those out, link in the description. Otherwise, thanks for just watching the video.